So would you say your name
Patricia Elisabeth Carroll,
and your date of birth?
July 4th, 1938.
Wow, long time. So
Mhm.
you're 84 years old?
No, 85.
Oh, wow.
Going to be 86 in July.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations.
Say that on July 5th.
So your birthday is always right after a big national holiday. I bet everyone was pooped out and didn't have big parties for you.
You hit it right on the head. Everybody's away on my birthday, but it's okay.
Yeah. So I wanted today to talk about how you came to Reiki, how you met John Gray, how you came to study with him. Could you tell us a little bit about your life before Reiki and then your life after meeting John?
Well, before I was owning a restaurant, had been in business for most of my life.
Mm.
Um, I'm pausing there because I want to make sure I did 1,000 things before John. Um, there was an article in the local newspaper said, well, she's ran several businesses, she's opened a restaurant, what's next? Alligator wrestling. So I had a really busy life, and then I started to have some chronic pain issues. So I looked around for somebody who could help it, and I found this wonderful couple, um, Sandra and Joseph Dugan, who have both now passed. And they lived in the area of Connecticut and Massachusetts area that I did. And so I made an appointment to go see them. So I'm waiting in the office for the nurse. She was a nurse to come in, and a nurse and a massage practitioner and a colonic therapist and all of that. And I'm sitting there on the chair, and I see all these degrees on the wall. And one of those degrees said second degree REIKI. So I'm looking at it and go, what does that word mean? So I keep looking at it and I'm just curious. And I heard, this is true, I heard a voice, and I don't normally hear voices. And the voice said, you shall be a Reiki master. And I didn't even know how to say the word, so I couldn't have invented that one up. And I got scared. And I decided I was going to leave that office immediately. Any place that was having voices talk to me was not a good idea. So as I got up to leave, Sandra walked in and I said, what does that mean up there? And so she explained Reiki to me. And I said, well, I just heard a voice that said I should study that. And she said, oh, well, that'd be a good idea. I said, no, but with that person that wrote that, John Harvey Gray. Oh, she said, no, 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 no. It takes him 6 months to answer a request. If you're lucky, and he never returns your phone calls. So I said, nope, that's who I'm supposed to study with. May I have his contact information? And she said, okay, but it won't work. I said, all right. So I went home and I called the number. And an hour later, John called me back. And he said, find two people, I'll be there tomorrow. So the first two people I called said, oh, yeah, I'll take a workshop. And the next morning, at my home, the next morning, get a knock on the door, and I open the door, and there is the cutest blue-eyed person you'd ever want to see in your life. And I looked into his eyes and I realized he wasn't in there. I don't know, but there was such light, I could not recognize a person. And he came in, and in 2 days, we did Reiki 1. And at the same time, my nephew was there, who was 8 years old, and he spoke to him for a couple of minutes and said he has to take the training. So an 8-year-old kid came into the training and did a couple of things short, studied a few little things, and John initiated him as well. And then when the workshop was over, John said, and I don't remember exactly because I was in Space City after that workshop. He said something like, you have to get Reiki 2 as soon as possible. And I believe it was somewhere between a few weeks or 3 months. He was back, and I was the only one in the class. So I think it was pretty close to the first degree. And he came and spent the weekend and was initiated, and I was initiated into Reiki 2.
Do you remember what year that was or around what date?
Yeah, July for Reiki 2 was July 15th, 1984, I believe. Let me just look. Yep, July 15th, 1984.
Great. So the level 1 class was a few weeks or a few months before that.
Yes.
Fantastic.
Somewhere I have the first degree, but I looked through almost everything yesterday and I couldn't find it.
That's okay. Was your first degree certificate a little business-sized card?
No,
Oh, was it a big certificate?
I think so.
When I learned Reiki from John, of course, 10 years later, 1993 or 94, he had a big box of business cards printed with the Reiki certificate with a green border, and the words were on it, and he would just write in your name, the date, and he would sign it. So because he taught so many people, he came to New York and he taught a class of 45 people. No way to make big certificates for 45 people. But at the lunch break on the second day, he would sit down with the list of the attendees. He always had that master list of the attendees, their addresses, phone numbers, and he would go through and make out the certificate cards for them. So my level 1 certificate was a tiny little business card.
That is so wild. Maybe I should look for that because I don't recall, again, after the workshop, I was like out of it in space. But it could have been, but I don't recall that at all.
Okay. So what happened after Reiki 2?
Well, I practiced it to a fault, I believe. I had several, I owned a restaurant at the time, so I had some limited time frame, but I used it for myself, and I still do every single day. But an adventure began on where I was going to go with this, and John almost immediately wanted me to go to mastership. But I had some issues. I was a chronic pain sufferer. I had agoraphobia at that time. I don't now, but I did then. So I felt limited, and of course, as some of us will feel, especially if we're Catholic or Jewish, I didn't feel worthy. Thinking the word master alone bothered me. So it took a little convincing, but he insisted that I begin the journey of mastership. And with John at that time, it wasn't like now people go and get their Reiki masterships in a couple of months and some for the next weekend. I studied with John from 84 to 91, 7 years. Yeah.
Can you tell us about your master initiation? How did you know when you were ready, or how did he know when you were ready?
I think he convinced me I was ready. I think I shared some of those pictures with you at my graduation, so to speak, of John
Yes.
and I holding the teddy bear. Yeah, I don't really recall. That was a blurry 7 years. Yeah.
What were your impressions of John during those years that you were in the master training?
I thought the sun rose and set on John. I don't want to get teary because part of me really, really misses him, especially after looking at the files yesterday and looking at the pictures of him in Jakarta and all of that beautiful lineage that we have. Brian, I was so blessed with the lineage that we have. And when I see people take Reiki 1, 2, and 3, and whatever else they do in 3 weeks or something, two things happen. One, I get really angry, and at the same time, I feel really sorry for them that they don't have the lineage that we have. Yeah.
How was John as a house guest?
He was really good. You never saw him.
Oh,
He did the workshop, he ate his supper, and he went in his room. That was it. And you didn't see him again till the next morning. He was like a taskmaster. Boom, 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 boom. And he taught that way. I remember one day, I don't know why I did it, but I was on the first pattern and I held the knees from the front. Well, you would have thought World War III just broke out. He got completely crazy. Do not ever, I don't ever want to see you do that again. Oh my God. And it was, he was so precise. And I understand that now because I've worked with other spiritual teachers, not Reiki teachers, who have said, I'm strict because I know the minute you're not with me, you will go wide. And if I'm strict, then you only go a little wide. And I think that's what John was doing. He was trying to be so firm so that when we went out on our own, we wouldn't get too wide, too extreme by adding stuff, et cetera, et cetera. And I know a lot of teachers have done that. To me, if anybody asks me a question, and there are a lot of questions that are not Reiki, as you probably know, that come up during a workshop. And I say, if you want to ask me that question again, ask me on lunch break. And then during lunch, I will answer whatever. But once I'm in the Reiki time zone, no, it was just Reiki, as John taught it. Yeah.
During those 7 years of master training, did you organize classes for him?
I did. In fact,
Elaine Abrams.
Elaine Abrams was one of the people in the class that I organized for him.
Could you tell me about how you met her and what it was like to know Elaine? As you know, I did my 3.5-year master apprenticeship at Elaine's office in New York.
Oh, that's right. I didn't recall that, Brian. I didn't know her very much. It was just during that workshop. She came as a guest of a friend of mine at that time of life. And I know that she was a powerful being, very, as I could remember, very willfully centered. And John wanted her to take the next trainings with me. And I remember her saying, nope, I'm only training with you. And that sounded very familiar just because that's what I said as well. And that's all I really know of her. Yeah.
When you say willfully centered, what do you mean by that?
She had an idea of where she wanted to go, and she wasn't going to budge from that.
Okay.
Does it sound like her, as you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Willfully centered sounds like her. I'm just thinking about people who watch this video in the future who didn't know her.
Oh.
Willfully centered was actually a perfect description of Elaine. And she
I
was a
only knew her
powerful
for that
being.
weekend. and maybe I met her one other time or so, but to be honest with you, I remember that one weekend she took the course, and I don't remember much of her after that.
Did you meet any of John Gray's other Reiki masters?
I'm thinking back.
In those days,
Well,
my
I had lunch with Phyllis Furamoto one day.
oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
What do you know what year that was?
Somewhere between 84 and 91. I don't.
Was John with
Uh,
you?
yeah, John was with me. I was going. I went to several of John's trainings with other people, his classes, and as a Reiki Master student, that's what I was there for. And at one of them, when we had lunch, Phyllis Furamoto was there, and several other people. There could have been another master there. I don't recall. I do remember the picture in my mind. It's a strange thing what the mind remembers with pictures.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember standing in one room, and I'm looking through the doorway to where the kitchen was and the kitchen table. And they were serving, and I was that distant because they were serving lobster of some sort, and I have a shellfish allergy, so I don't go in here anyway. And I remember Phyllis was sitting at the head of the table, and there was a big bowl of lobster legs or something, and she was eating it like Joe the bartender, just chewing on it, throwing the bone over here. And I was sitting there going, I expected her to lift off and be a ball of light, but she was just a regular person. And it took me a while to get that, because let me just tell you spiritually where I am, and maybe then you'll understand it. I'm a Roman Catholic, charismatic, born again Christian with a Jewish soul. Really, that describes me. So unfortunately, if you pick up some of the stuff in all of that that may be a little rigid, I had in my mind that Reiki masters and the grandmaster and everybody was like different than an average human being. So my idea of masters is that's something you had to grow into and be this ball of light, which part of that's true. I mean, we can be light and still have shrimp and other things that throw a bone.
Great. Good stories, Patricia.
It's true. Can't embellish any of these.
So, I want to go back a little to your master training, to your master initiation day. What were the traditions that were carried out on your master initiation day?
I don't know exactly what you mean by traditions that were carried out.
For example, John performed the initiation.
Mm-hmm.
And usually after the initiation, there's taking of photos. John always would show the photo of Takata giving him Reiki, which
Yes,
we
I
carry
have.
out as a tradition on the master initiation day.
Mm-hmm.
So you lay down, your master puts their hands on you, you take a photo together. Did you do that
If
with
we
John?
if we did that, I don't recall, or nor do I have that photo. What I have is the photo of John and I holding the Reiki teddy bear in front of
Yeah.
Sai Baba and his elephant. And that was like the initiation. That was the end thing of it. And it was just it was a beautiful workshop. I had 1, 2, 3 of my dearest friends at it. And that was it. It wasn't again, it was at the place I was staying, and I just remember the end of it. I don't remember much else, which had a tendency when I was training with him and traveling with him. I remember one workshop. This is so, I never was able to figure this out, but knowing that I'm a space cadet anyway, and by that I mean I believe in like all things. So I'm at this workshop with John, and he had me go into the attunement room with him. And he always said it's only 6 people at a time. He wouldn't do any more than 6 people. Then in those days, I don't know what he did after that. So I went in, and it was a large workshop. 6, 12, 18. It had to be 24 or 30 people at that workshop. So we went in, and he had me follow through what he was doing, and so we got to so whatever it was, we had to bring in 4 or 5 groups of 6. And so I remembered 2, and I said to him, and then the next thing I know, we're continuing the workshop. I said, John, you forgot. We have to do more. He said, Patricia, I did all of them. I don't remember it. I remember when we got to the second group, it felt weird. I felt like I disappeared and then reappeared again. So I said, oh, if the masters took me up and did something, it could be, I don't know what it was, but that's stuck in my mind. It was totally blanked out, totally, from the however long the 6 people take to be attuned times 3. If you ever have any solution to that question, I would really, because John wouldn't answer it. So
I've also lost time doing Reiki attunements.
I do myself, but I never witnessed it that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
You do large workshops. I know the largest workshop I did was 32. I was so exhausted and what would the word be? Spacey afterwards.
Mm.
I said, I don't think 32 is a good thing. It was a great workshop. To this day, I have a painting that one of my students did, and I think we were in Syracuse, New York, maybe Utica, Syracuse, someplace up there. Anyway, at the end of that 32 workshop, this one woman walked in with a unbelievably large, maybe I still have it. I don't know where it's going to go when I go, because I can't let this go to just nowhere. She painted, it turned out that she was a well-known artist who signed it with her unknown name. She said, I have to do it this way. If I tell you who I really am, I'll have to charge you $4,000 for this. It was a picture of my auric field, my body. I usually teach leaning on a stool. Don't ask me why, I don't know. But it was me, nakedly me, with my aura. And it was, oh, it's such an unbelievably gorgeous painting. So things, you'd be surprised. It's just surprise things that people come up with out of a large workshop. So that's the plus of having one.
Wow. Do you know, John, when I learned from John, he also sat perched on the edge of a stool, and Elaine taught that way as well.
Huh. Do
Maybe,
you?
maybe you learned it from him. No, I don't. I stand. Because of the way my office is, it makes more sense for me to stand behind the massage table with the students in rows of chairs in front of it to demonstrate and to teach.
Oh, yes, if you're doing that in a one-room office. Yeah, most of the places I taught in were schools I could have 2 or 3 rooms or whatever.
Yeah, I teach in one room, so I can't have more than 12 people because that's all the space I have. And in that room, I can set up 2 or 3 tables if I need to. If the class is only 5 or 6 people, I make do with one table, and we practice as a group, not one-on-one. If I have, say, 12 people, I'll set up 3 tables and have 4 at each table. So one person lays down and 3 people treat.
Yeah, I could see that.
So I don't have room for more than 3 tables. And that's all the rent I can afford to pay in New York City.
I still don't know how you do it. Yeah.
Were you in your master training, did you pay John the $10,000 on the day of the initiation, or did you
No,
make
it was billed out because he knew I was an individual of almost no income. So that was paid out over a time.
And did you have a master training contract?
Yes.
Did John ever tell you the origin of that contract?
No.
When I signed that contract, Elaine told me John received a contract like that from Takata. Do you still have your master training contract?
It may be in the file. I remember seeing it a few years ago, but I'd have to look for it.
If you ever find it, would you share a copy of it?
I
I'd
sure
love
will.
to be able to pass it on as part of our lineage. Yeah, I think it's something that makes our lineage especially strong, having a contract. Um, it wasn't like a legally binding agreement. John always called it an energetic agreement between the master and the student. Um, do you have any experiences with the master contract?
I'm actually listening to you, but also trying to remember my reaction to it. I actually see John had, oh, I was hoping you wouldn't go in this direction. John seemed to have a different type of understanding with me that I never hear anybody else say. John told me that I could not work except for doing Reiki.
Yes. I
That was,
had he told me the same thing, that while I did my master training, Reiki had to be my primary occupation, not my sole occupation, but the primary one.
he was more specific with said you cannot. So after almost starving to death, I had to go back to work because I was new. I couldn't manage. You know, I had given him the workshops and created workshops for him with most of my friends and acquaintances and associates. So there wasn't anybody left for me to train. But thank God one of my students had a lot of contacts in upstate New York and got me workshops. But yeah, I don't know why. Like he told me never to join the Reiki Alliance. But then years later, he joined the Reiki Alliance. He wanted me to join his grouping. He had his own little network of communication with. So I don't know. In the few times I've spoken with you and with others, it never sounds familiar to me of what what he told me. I don't understand that.
You mentioned that when you reviewed your notes for this call, you got very emotional.
Yes,
Could you share what that's about?
I don't know.
Could you try?
If I want to cry on and leave tears for those that come afterwards. But I'm not 100% sure until yesterday that John and I left on good terms. But I'm so glad I went through some of the stuff yesterday and I looked at the dates. After Reiki Mastership, I got seriously ill. They thought I had liver cancer. And I was desperate for John to understand that. And maybe even when he was in the area, I was out in, where was I? Out in Hyannisport or somewhere out there at the time, that he would come and treat me. And he was like 2 hours away and he refused to do it. And he stopped communicating with me. And I felt like that was so, I felt it was cruel because This was a man that I held up so high and did so much to make him proud of me. I could not understand it. So there was a couple of years I didn't hear from him at all. And then I got to a place where I had a couple of friends and one of my students, and I went on a 40-day fast. I lived only on blended green vegetables and mashed potatoes, believe it or not. But I had 2 Reiki treatments per day for 40 days. And I went back for the test and they said, I don't know, it must have been a mistake. There is no liver cancer. So I found a note. I don't know if I put it in the top part of this little folder or not. Because it really touched me. Here. So I found a note with the date of 95, which is a year or two, 91, 2 years after I had asked him and he didn't come. And it's just dated May 3rd, 1995. And it said, hi, Patricia, here's the flyer that Elaine Abrams is using, copied in large print. Oh, copied in large as part of my flyer. You can do the same. Call me. I love you, John. So that was the problem. And I don't know, or challenge, I don't know if you want to go to that end statement there or not, but John treated women students better than men, and occasionally had crushes, which in my mind, there's a line you cannot date a student. There's a line there for me. But that's the way he was. And when I refused to move in with him, that was sort of the end of stuff.
So when you say when you refused to move in with him, do you mean that there was a day he asked you to move in with him?
Yes. He wanted another student, another master to live with him because he knew he was growing older and he couldn't do everything by himself. And that's the only thing I could assume was the motivation for that. Now, I'm not saying it was sexual, so please don't misunderstand me. But you never know. And since I was the way I am, there was, no way that I could do that. It didn't feel right to me. So we had some issues around that. So when I saw that 1995 date, which was after all those, pretty much after our issues together, him and I cried on that because maybe we did leave on halfway decent terms. And then Lourdes Gray showed up. Lourdes, I knew her, and so she became his assistant, so to speak. And then they got married. Yeah.
Could I make a request for myself?
Sure.
Not millions of dollars, but anything you have from John Gray to go into
Well,
the
I had thought I would leave you all my files from him.
That would be great.
Because otherwise they have to be buried with me because I can't leave that to float around the universe.
Yeah, of course. Anything you have from John Gray, it would be such a privilege for me to be able to hold it in an archive to share with students in the future, only in our lineage.
And I hope that when your time comes to pass, whenever that is, that you have someone who loves the lineage as much as you and I do.
Yeah.
And who has respect for John, who did his best. And again, human sides, we have human sides. And And he was a perfect example of being an amazing master and being
Yeah.
a human all at the same time.
So, Patricia,
Yes.
nice to see you again a week later. So last week, I don't even remember where we left off. Do you?
Nope.
Where, where we finished our conversation. I
With
mean, you
all
were
the tears I was shedding last week,
no.
I don't think I should be remembering.
Okay, it's fine. But you did talk about John initially not wanting you to join the Reiki Alliance. And then in what year do you think he joined the Reiki Alliance?
I haven't got the slightest idea.
John Gray was one of the founders of the Reiki Alliance.
He had some sort of an organization, and he had his own symbol, not symbol as in Reiki, but his own little logo,
Logo.
so to speak. Yeah,
Yes, I remember with the Japanese sort of scales on it and
yeah.
yeah, John's logo, which did you use his logo? Did you
No,
pay an annual licensing fee to use it?
no, it did not feel right. I'm a
Yeah.
creature of feeling intuitively. I'm highly intuitive outside of Reiki, even.
Mm,
And it really cramped me up when I thought of it. I said, this doesn't feel right. The
okay.
alliance felt right, but that did not feel right. So, yeah.
Yeah, John created that logo and any master that he initiated could use the logo and pay a small annual licensing fee. I forget $15 or something like that to use his logo. And I know Elaine Abrams used it all the way up until she retired about 5 years ago. She used his logo on her business cards and website. Interesting is when I approached John about doing the master training, he told me, I will not approve you for master training unless you agree to join the Reiki Alliance, and you will not receive your master certificates unless you are a member of the Reiki Alliance. And I thought that was a very strange turnabout. When I had my interview for the Reiki Alliance, they told me, how can you become a member? Your teacher dropped out of the Reiki Alliance. John was not a member, but he insisted that Elaine could not train me unless I agreed in advance that I would become a member of the Reiki Alliance. And Elaine wasn't allowed to give me my master's certificate until I had become accepted by the Reiki Alliance.
I have a thought on that.
Tell me.
John, John was like inside, but he wasn't there. He was like in two dimensions at the same time, as far as I could see.
Yeah.
He could have been very prophetic. You are an amazing individual in reference to the alliance. You do so much. You hold the glue. You are the glue that holds a lot of things together. You can do what you want about editing out this or keeping it, but it's true. And I believe, knowing that John had that gift, that he could have seen that coming. And if he followed guidance, the guidance might have said to him, this guy's got to go into the alliance. I can't think of any other explanation based on John's prophetic abilities.
Mm. It's interesting you say he was so prophetic. So I think we left off around the early 90s because you became a master and you said, John wanted you to join his organization and you didn't feel comfortable with that. So what happened with your Reiki career after 1992? What did you do?
Well, it can, I did workshops all over New York State and eventually went all the way down to Florida. So I stayed on the East Coast. I traveled a lot. I didn't do it in one spot.
Okay.
And I had several booked and I believe I mentioned this last week, when they diagnosed me with liver cancer.
Mm,
And so I was quite sick, and I ended up canceling many of them, which unfortunately really hurt your career. You know, I did get back to it, but still it damaged for a while. Yeah.
of course. And how long did it take to get through the liver cancer?
Well, I don't remember if I told you this or not. So if I'm repeating this, just tell me. What I did was I went on a fast. And I fasted for 40 days on mashed potatoes and green vegetable soup. That was puree. I got 2 Reiki treatments a day, and I walked 3 hours a day till I couldn't stand anymore. Just kept walking, walking, walking. And then I went back for my exam, and they said they couldn't find anything.
That's amazing.
I've seen it happen with others. Just one day there's a tumor, the next day there's not a tumor.
Fantastic.
Reiki,
So
Reiki is so amazing. It's just so amazing.
I remember last time you told that story, a different version of that story, and you said that it left you with a lot of hurt feelings about John because you had asked him if he would treat you and he didn't respond.
No, he didn't. And he was only, what bothered me, he was only 3 hours away. It wasn't,
Mhm.
or 2 or 3 hours away. And I was on Cape Cod and he was in Boston, something like that.
Mhm.
But that's after that, I left Cape Cod and went to Connecticut where I did that fasting.
Had you been to John's house in Shipsbell Lane where he lived?
Yes.
And was he
Funny
living alone?
thing, I was
Mhm.
going up there to study for the day or something, and I had a student driving me, and uh, I'm allergic to bees. And I was on my way there, and I was saying, I don't feel right about going. It was just got cramps about going. Intuitively, don't go. So a bee flies
Mm.
in the window and bites me. So I ended up having to go to the hospital emergency room on my way to see John.
Oh my gosh.
So we left that and we got to John's, and I only could stay a short time because I was really not feeling so great after that experience. I don't know. Sometimes things get in your way. I've never been able to figure that out, Brian. You travel one way and all of a sudden there's a block. Where does that come from? Does that come from the universe? Does it come from people not wanting to do something? I don't know where it comes from. But I noticed that with John and me consistently after the mastership.
Mm. So
Not
during
be
your yeah, during your master time, it was easy. Everything flowed smoothly.
well, it wasn't so easy. He was insistent of my being a master, and I was insistent that I wasn't well enough. I had chronic pain and I had a lot of health issues. So I didn't know how I was going to be able to do mastership work. And I realized that all that meant to me as I get the opportunity to master my own life. Not that I was some supreme being floating around the planet. And so that takes a lot of work. I mean, I'm still working on my life. So, yeah, so it was never easy, but it was easier. And then I finally gave in and did the mastership.
So what were your interactions with John after that time, after your liver cancer was cured? Did you see him again? Did you talk to him?
I must have, because he sent me that note that I read last week. I think I read it to you. And that was
Yes.
95. But I don't know what it was, to be honest with you. I blocked out a tremendous amount of memory with John because it was so painful.
Mm.
Again, the love-hate thing. I mean, I honored him and loved him um, in a way that you love someone you study with. It's like an honoring of the teacher. That's that connection. But that's all it was, and it just hurt me so deeply because I would have never done that. To me, if a student, all my students had my phone number. If they needed to call me at 3 o'clock in the morning, they had the permission to do it. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to live that way, but that's how I lived because that's who I am. To this day, my students have my phone number and the phone is next to me every single night. which is not good for you, but I wouldn't hear it if it was in the other room. So it bothered me that somebody I thought so much of made the choice, it's a choice, not to help me through such a crisis. So I blocked it out.
So in 1995, I was taking level 2 with John. I attended his level 2 class, I think 3 or 4 times. He would let you repeat the class for a very low fee, but you just sit in the back and you don't participate and you don't get the initiations. So I was taking the class and he brought a new person with him, Lourdes Gray. Lourdes. She wasn't Gray then, she was just Lourdes. And she was in her master training. And the next thing I heard, he was marrying her. And did you ever meet Lourdes Gray?
Oh yeah, several times.
Oh, so when and how did you meet Lourdes? Where? Could you tell the stories about that?
To be honest with you, that's not very clear. It was I believe it was at a workshop, and maybe when she was being trained as master, and I think I was studying with John then as and went to a workshop and met her. I can't think of any other way. It had to be at a workshop.
Yeah.
But I know I met her more than once, and that was during the time that John and I were struggling with, would I move into his organization and support him as he got older or not? And I couldn't do it. So it was around that time, it was extremely, what's a good word for it? There was a lot of emotion going around with Lourdes and myself and John. And it was really, the word sticky comes to me. It was like, you don't want to be in that kind of a circle. And I sure as heck didn't want to be in that kind of circle because that's not where I come from. So that's all I can tell you about that, because I don't recall anymore. I'm not saying there wasn't anymore. I'm just saying I don't recall it. It's a lot of years between then and now.
Of course, of course. Well, that was about the time I met John. I when I first met him in 93, my impression of him after one Reiki class was, this is a man who's looking for a woman. It was clear that he was looking for a woman to spend the last part of his life with.
A
And
woman and
a
someone
caretaker
who, yes,
and a
yes,
lineage bearer, apparently.
yes. And I understand that,
Yeah. So,
that
um,
sums it up.
yeah. And so unfortunately
But
you
that
were
was the
able to go back.
human side of him.
Of
That
course.
was so much the human side. And then you had the spirit side,
Hmm.
which that when he went into that state of consciousness, as probably we all do
Yeah.
when we're teaching, it was like night and day.
So let's talk about that others, part of the consciousness.
What I have done in the past, many, many times to unbelievable results, is after the consciousness and I are connected, according to whatever intuitive message I get, I will talk with them out loud and either take them on a journey or whatever comes to me. And 2 cases I remember, there were a lot, but one really shocked me. I don't remember what I was saying at the time as I was holding her head, but I got an amazing odor filled the room of bologna and seawater. I went, oh, and as I got that odor, she let out a yell and relaxed. And I said, does bologna and seawater mean anything to you? She said, yes. I said, can you tell me? And it's so that she had a major trauma in Coney Island in a deli. And another time, I'm doing the same thing, and I get the message to say to her, no more pink. And it repeated, no more pink. And I'm saying to her, I want to translate that to her. So I said to her, you have to stop using pink. No more pink. Well, it was like the world came to an end. She said, thank you, thank you, thank you. I started to paint my whole house pink. And my husband said, one more room of pink and I'm leaving. No more pink. Go figure. That's why I said, I think everybody has individuality, and it depends on the type of practice one has and who comes to that person. So
Mm.
certain people would come to me, and certain people that would go maybe to you would not come to me. They wouldn't be drawn to come to me.
I've always found that Reiki sends the right people for me. And if they're not right for me, it sends them to someone else who's right for them.
Yes, yes, I have found that too.
Do you have your notes from when you took Reiki classes with John?
Mhm.
Okay. Um,
And I'm going to send them to you when I pass,
thank you. Um,
along with another Sai Baba picture I found 2 days ago.
okay. Did you ever get recordings of John teaching Reiki classes? Did he let you make audio recordings or give you any?
No, that was forbidden. But, and I wish I could find it, I'm still searching for it. John did something one day that I thought was not proper because, I'm a stickler for other stuff. He had someone take a picture of him attuning 6 people.
Oh, yes. Uh-huh. I have that picture with John's hand, one hand up in the air, one hand is over someone's head. He gave that photo out. There was a row
And,
of like 6 people, and he has his hand over one of their heads. They
and
all
what
have
else did you see? What else did you see?
the light, the aura around him.
It wasn't, the one I had wasn't above his head. It was a cloud of white over all of the people who were sitting there.
Oh, with John, with the one I have, it's like a rainbow over his head and bright white light above the rainbow.
Hmm. That that may be Carillion photography. This was Polaroid.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and
Was
mine's just a regular printed photo.
this was a Polaroid picture
John loved those
of
Polaroids.
six
Everywhere he went,
people.
he had
Huh?
that Polaroid camera. He loved his Polaroids.
So it was, and I've tried to find it. I've tried to find it. I can't find it anywhere. But I know I saw it. It was there. So I'm glad that you also had a picture. You
Yeah.
see, to me, the time of attunement is a holy moment in time.
Yes.
It's such a holy moment in time to me that taking a picture of it is sacrilegious. I'm a stickler there. I can't help it. That's my background of growing up with ritual and things of that sort. No matter what ritual it may be, it could be a Native American ritual because I'm part Native American. It could be whatever. Um, as long as you are connecting to the one, um, to me, that's holy time. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, Takata in some places called it a blessing of the Holy Spirit.
Yes. Thank you. Yep.
She also always said Reiki is God's power flowing through your hands.
I had a Catholic priest one day who was not a student, but just a dear friend. And he knew of Reiki, and we were close friends. And he said one day, and I had a bookmark printed of it. And this is what it said. This was his description of Reiki. Love, purified by God and put into action, creates a miracle.
Mm.
And I've seen miracles, you know, I've seen spirits get spitting up in my practice room at the Kripalu Institute. I've seen cancer disappear. I've seen all kinds of healings. Those years that I spent at Kripalu doing Reiki, I can't tell you, I used to have a stack that thick. At Kripalu, after you do a health service, the patient client gets a form to rate their experience. That thick, about having miracles. I mean, from people from all walks of life. I used to keep that. I don't even know if I have that anymore. But some well-known people, and that they just had this. And most of the time, I don't even know what's happening because that's within them.
Mm-hmm.
Unless it's something like vomiting up spirits in your room, then you have to clean it up. But nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing surprises me. You can't tell me one thing that I would say I'm surprised. You love it. You have to love it. I mean, who has a better life? I used to work about maybe 8 hours in the healing department, hands-on healing. Who has it better to be able to work 8 straight hours? Because we had 15 minutes in between our clients, but to work that many hours, I never ate. You can't eat and do that. Your energy disappears. So I would drink a little juice through it. So the more I fasted, the higher the energy came. And who has it better to spend? I was so high in the spirit when I left my office at Kripalu, my room, my designated room, that there was no word. You know, it's that like quote from Jesus, I have eaten of food that you know not. So I asked why they put me I was at the very end of the hall. I had the last room. They said, because the yelling and screaming that comes from that office sometimes disturbs others. So we put you all the way down there. So it's all Reiki. It's just amazing. You have to love it. And if anybody that you're showing this to ever doubts whether Reiki mastership is a good thing, they have to hear they need to know all of the aspects. And to go in there with leave your ego at the door. When you take your shoes off, let your ego sit. When I start a practice of healing, not training, well, that too, but more here. When I put my hands down eventually on the individual, I picture myself walking out of my body and leaving a light body behind. And I ask for the highest and best for that person, and that God should do the work and my ego's out. That's how I do that, whether it's teaching or treating. I got carried away there. I'm sorry.
In that work, do you ever feel like you get exposed to anything that feels bad for you?
No, John taught, and I believed it, and I really believe it, that Reiki's a one-way street.
Mm.
I've worked on people with AIDS. I've worked with everything you could think of. And never once did anything back up. And you know why? Brian, in sign language, let me stand up more. In sign language, this means want.
Yeah.
Okay. What is that? You're pulling something towards you.
Mm-hmm.
You have to approach it without wanting. Those that want someone to heal, they're doing this. Highest and best. You know how much credit we get as teachers, as healers? We get credit for showing up. That's all. Somebody gets healed. Thank you, masters. Thank you, God. Thank you, whoever you're thanking.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do it. You're only a conduit for this to come one way through you and to the body. That's it. Or the spirit, or the mind, whichever part you're treating, or all three. And that's why I've never received anything back from that. Never.
Yeah, I always teach my students that we're like the guy who delivers the newspaper at 5 a.m. He doesn't write it. He might not be able to read. His only job is to roll down the window of his truck and toss the paper onto your front porch.
Exactly.
He doesn't care if you read it.
The only difference between that scenario and the garden hose one that John gave me is that in the garden hose, the inside of the hose has to get wet.
Mm.
It can't go from the faucet through the hose to the garden without getting the inside wet. And that's why he said that we get healed at the same time we're healing.
Yeah, that's a good analogy, the garden hose.
Hey, my cat's visiting. Hey, okay.
I had an interesting text from a student this morning. She said, last night I was working on a distance treatment and I started to feel cold and shaky. I had to stop. Then I restarted. And the symptoms restarted. I ended up grabbing a selenite wand and cutting the treatment short, and then I felt better. Do you have any guidance on how to handle something like that? I wrote back, I've never experienced anything like that. Cold and shaky during a distance treatment. Have you ever had any strange experiences like that when you were doing Reiki on people? Where unexplained physical things happen to you? Not that you took on something bad.
I'm only laughing because the one that first came to my mind was I have a friend who was in the Foreign Service, and she was over in Afghanistan. And we spent a lot of time on the phone. She had a phone that could go from there to here. And so I sent her Reiki, but I fell asleep as I was doing it. So she called me the next day and said, I don't know what you did, but I can't sleep. I'm like running around here like a bat out of hell to everything. She said, please don't send me Reiki anymore. It turned her off. She would not receive it anymore. It scared her because she had so much energy. And so that was pretty much the weirdest one that I've had. I've had some others. Let's think where else. Well, I've had people tell me that I visit them during the night and I do healing with them. I go, okay, what are you going to say, right? And what was the other thing? Oh, I actually tuned into it to a student and saw him as I was doing the treatment crying with a little child. So I called him the next day. He said, I felt your presence last night. I said, well, I saw you crying with a child, a little girl child. He said, right, I was crying with my daughter. So I went, oh, okay. So I feel grateful for anything like that. Did it help them? I hope so. And but I can't pull it to me. I just have to let it go. If they die, thank you, God. If they live, thank you, God.
Mm.
If they get healed, thank you, God. I don't want the karma. I don't accept it. I'm just a person who shows up as an instrument of peace and healing.
Have you ever experimented with imbuing any object with Reiki?
No, no, that feels a little weird to me, to to do that to something. I've used it to I don't know if I should tell this one or not. Well, I've used it for sealing a room, right? And I confessed this to somebody. I used it once inappropriately. Not really, but I'm in a movie theater, right? And we're seeing a film that has a very sensitive scene in it about some girl getting raped. I don't remember the whole thing. And these three girls in front of me were giggling and laughing, one in particular. So I just put my hands up and I did a distant and told her to go to sleep. And she did.
Very naughty.
It's only once.
That's great.
And I truly believe sending Reiki or bringing Reiki to the United States was not a great idea. And that's my personal feeling. Even though I've benefited from it, and so have many, many students and you students, because we fight hard to keep it as pure as possible. And I believe Usui was right, that it wouldn't be respected here as it was over there. So that's the first thing with that. If they can put Reiki symbols on milk cartons, I saw somebody did something like that somewhere. I just picked up a book that was in my box from, I think her name is Ruth Emerson.
Mm.
She did a whole Reiki book, published and buy it in the store. And at the very end, she put symbols in there. I don't even know what they are. And at the very end, she says, well, I just want to let everyone know that I took non-traditional Reiki, so I can't swear by any of this working or something like that. And that goes out to the world. And there are people who will pick it up and try to do that. And who knows what comes of that? I don't know. Yeah. We need peace and we need love in this planet right now. We sure as hell do not need upside down and backwards. The other thing is, I had an experience once. I was in Boston, I believe, and they had one of these fairs where they show all different kind of new age things, and they had a Carillion photographer there. Do you know what Carillion photography is? Okay, so I was there with the New York Times and rushed in to see a few things, and I saw that. I said, and I sat down and they took a picture, and it was terrible. All you could see was red and orange. And I said, wait a minute, wait. Let me take my coat off and give me 2 minutes. So I sat down and I centered myself. I did Choku-rei and I said, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And he took another picture. And as it develops, he went, I said, what's the matter? He said, what did you do? So I told him. And he said, next. He didn't want to deal with it. The second picture was very faded red, and there was a white aura around my body, unbelievably. That tells me a lot.
Yeah. It also tells me that we can really control our energy bodies, or some people can.
Yeah.
I know I get so many students who want to learn to, like, can I see the aura? And I tell them, I don't think it matters. I don't think it's
It
worth
doesn't, but you know, that's so, I tell them, See me later, I'll teach it to you. It takes 5 minutes. To see the aura of any human being is so simple because it's scientific. It isn't woo-woo at all. You require a blank wall and lazy eyes, like the Buddhists practice the lazy eye meditation. And you will see auras from anybody. The best place to where I send clients or whoever is to go into a Protestant church, because there's less behind them than in a Catholic church. Send them into a Protestant church, sit in the back, focus yourself so you can see the speaker and have a blank wall behind him or her, and pick a spot on that wall. And when he or she gets up to do the sermon, get very quiet within yourself and let your eyes slightly close. And you will see whatever that person's experiencing, it's all over the place, comes out, red, yellow, green, whatever. And but the minute you look at the color, you lose it. But if you keep your eyes in that lazy spot at the back and you're not fully focused, you will see that. But we walk around with full eyes all the time, so we don't see that. I'm sure that animals see that. So try it sometime. It's an amazing thing. So I know people who charge to teach aura seeing. Come on. My New York slips out occasionally.
We've covered a lot in these 2 hours. This is 1 hour, but an hour last week, an hour this week. I mean, I think I've heard sort of the chronology of your experience with John Gray, but we didn't talk at all about the last years of his life. Like, I remember around 2007, he had his retirement party. Lourdes threw a party for him, retirement party. It was also his 90th birthday, but that was when he stopped teaching Reiki classes. Did you ever see him in the 2000s? In the last years of his?
I don't think so.
Did you ever talk to him?
I remember getting invited to his party. No, I don't think I did.
Did you ever talk to him on the phone after he married Lourdes?
I remember I can't tell you the year, but I remember John had a stroke. I know he taught about stroke. And I've used it when I witnessed one waiting for the ambulance on somebody. But I almost feel a memory, I can see almost that memory of him telling me that if it wasn't for Reiki, he would have not made it through that stroke.
Did he say the whiplash position behind the neck? Where you put your fingers behind the neck?
That was, yeah, I'm trying to remember. That was one, and the other was alongside of the carotid artery.
Are there more questions that I should ask while I still have the opportunity?
No, but there's one thing I could share with you.
Yes, please.
I used to teach a Kripalu, not to the guests. They already had somebody in Reiki that did that. But I would train the faculty or the volunteers. So I was allowed to use the space to have my own workshops there as well. So I had a workshop one day. We were in the lower floor, which was a basement, but it wasn't a basement, it was above ground. And it was all musicians who did not know each other. I think maybe 2 of them knew each other, but so we had a couple of guitars, we had a harp. I think we had a violin, there were 6. Well, we started the workshop and I had them play. This was the Holy Spirit's workshop, let me tell you. It sounded so much discord, forget about it. And they talked about it, music, and how they could, they did the music part of this. So most of the workshop, instead of teaching them where to put hands on a person, was how to bring Reiki through their instrument.
Oh,
Whoa. So we meet Friday, we do Saturday, and this is Sunday morning. And we come together, we do our little Reiki thing, and I ask them to play. What came out of those instruments was beyond anything I've ever heard. So we're in this room, big room, all by ourselves. One by one, people came through the door until they were lined 30 or 40 people around the wall of this very big room as these people played. Some were crying, some weeping. So it was so profound that I have never experienced anything like that in my life.
that's wonderful.
Through their instruments. Have you ever had a workshop or know anybody who had one like that?
Never heard of anything like that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I had a dog workshop one time too. That's fun. Do you ever do dog workshop? You teach the owners of the dog how to treat their dogs. That's good.
Yeah, I can't have dogs in my office.
No, well, yeah. So that was the thought that came to me to tell you about that music workshop, which is, to this day, when I think about it, I want to weep.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Mm,
Did they keep performing after that, or was it a
I
one-time
have
thing?
no idea. It was almost as if, and three of them were from the area. I don't know where the other three came from. There was a little follow-up with, I believe, the harpist for a while. But I don't think they stayed together. I think that because they were, two of them were the only ones that knew each other, I believe. The rest just came together. Mm.
Wow.
And one other thing I wanted to tell you, your students mainly, there was a gentleman who worked at Kripalu. I'll just tell you his first name, Tom. And he was a foot reflexologist or something, I believe. So he came to me and he had cancer. And he had cancer of the throat. So I had a student at that time who was really, really strong into Reiki. He just really, and we connected. When him and I worked together, it was like, whoa. So I called him and we both worked on Tom. The other gentleman, the student of mine, also worked at Kripalu. Tom is the person who had the tumor, and the next day he went to the doctor because he had an appointment. The doctor said, "What the hell happened here? There's nothing showed." So Tom came to me that day and told me, and I was, thank you God, and said he had to go to, I believe it was New Mexico or someplace. And I said, let me warn you now, wherever you want to go, that's fine, but you must have a Reiki treatment every single day. Just because it disappeared doesn't mean that you're totally healed. This is not faith healing here, it's Reiki healing. He came back a month later and the cancer had returned.
Oh, wow.
He did not have the Reiki treatments. None, not one. I sat with Tom as he died. It was a death I never want to see anybody have. It was horrible. And the reason I share this is because that ego that comes in from sometimes people who are getting healed, or the practitioners who think that that makes them. The young man that I had working with me
Mhm.
took that into his ego, that he had healed cancer. No matter how I taught this person, and the person that Elaine Abrams was at the workshop before her first degree, the person who also took that workshop, who supported it, it was in her home. I've seen ego destroy people in many ways, in many levels. So I ask your students to really go deep, deep inside and make sure they realize the garden hose story. Because there's so many things that can come out of that. And that's what I would close with, is that's the music workshop and Tom, that they could only take that into their heart and their spirit and realize they're called to do a job. And that's to work on their life and themselves in masterhood and in first and second degree. If they're going to heal, it's not them. They get credit for showing up. Okay.
Thank you so much for talking, Patricia.
You're more than welcome. It's been a joy, especially this second session, because you let me just share.
Well, thank you. Thank you.